Welcome back. The SANDF will also be deployed to the Eastern Cape. Parliament heard this on Thursday. Speaking during the State of the Nation debate, Acting Police Minister Firoz Cachalia confirmed that the deployment will take place within the next 10 days and will now include the Eastern Cape. During his State of the Nation address, President Cyril Ramaphosa announced that the SANDF would be deployed to parts of the Western Cape and Gauteng to tackle gang violence and illegal mining. Newzroom Afrika's Kanita Hunter has more.
President Cyril Ramaphosa's decision to deploy soldiers to deal with rampant crime has drawn both praise and sharp criticism from members of Parliament.
The President's speech
During the debate on the State of the Nation address, Acting Police Minister Firoz Cachalia confirmed that boots on the ground are expected within the next 2 weeks.
I confirm that the National Commissioner of the South African Police Service and the Chief of our Army met yesterday to finalize the deployment plan, which will begin in the next 10 days. And by the direction of the President, I can confirm that the deployment will include the Eastern Cape. Mr. President, this decision is appreciated in communities across our country, from Umtata in the Eastern Cape to Philippi and Kaalicha in the Western Cape to Gauteng.
Ramaphosa's decision has been criticized, with experts and opposition parties arguing that the SANDF is not adequately capacitated to deal with crime. But others argue the President had no other choice, given the rise in violent crime.
Under your term, crime is out of control and your deployment of the army is the last resort. You are admitting that you have failed to fight crime. The people of Gauteng have been terrorized for too long by the so-called Zamazamas, and on the deployment of the army, we have no choice but to support you because you have destroyed law enforcement capacity.
Deputy Defence Minister Bantu Holomisa says the operational plans were already underway to support the intervention.
The GNU further recognizes that development cannot flourish without security. We therefore welcome the deployment of the SANDF in support of SAPS in crime epicenters such as the Cape Flats, Western Cape in general, as well as Eastern Cape, and now the issues related to the mining as well. In line with the orders issued by the Commander-in-Chief, President Ramaphosa, I confirm that the Department of Defense is seized with operational requirements to support stabilization interventions in consultation with the security cluster.
On the first day of the debate, the President faced criticism over the ongoing water crisis and his decision to lead a crisis committee, concerns around illegal immigration, and continued questions about accountability in the Phala matter.
The GNU is working because all parties are working very nicely together.
However, ministers within the Government of National Unity largely backed Ramaphosa, saying his address signalled that South Africa was turning a corner and that the GNU remained the best vehicle to stabilize and rebuild the country. For Newzroom Afrika on Channel 405, I am Kanita Hunter.
All right, we're now joined by political analyst Prof. Bheki Mngomezulu, who's going to help us unpack the SONA debate that took place today. Thank you so much for your time, Prof, and for joining us this evening. Would you say there was slightly less criticism in today's SONA debate, given that many of those that sat in the opposition benches previously are now part of the implementation?
Good evening, Katlego, and good evening to your viewers. The problem with the blue lights is that you don't always enjoy blue lights. When you have access to them, you protect them with everything you have. This is what has been happening since the 2024 general election, where there was no outright winner and therefore were forced to form a multi-party coalition government. So even parties like the DA that were on the opposite side are now part of government, and therefore they can no longer make the criticisms that they would ordinarily make. So this explains then why there was less criticism against the President Sona than we have seen before. It's particularly because those who were on the opposite side are now a part of the government, and therefore it's very difficult for them to criticize the government that they are part of. And in any case, the SONA that was delivered by President Ramaphosa was not his SONA, nor was it the ANC SONA, but it was the SONA that represented the views of all the 10 political parties, which was a slight deviation from what you saw in the January 8 statement of 2025, where the president was still experiencing a teething problem when he criticized the same members of the government that is leading. This time around, he tried to be nice to them because he saw what happened and then subsequently what happened with the budget speech. So yes, you are right in saying that indeed there was less criticism this time around compared to previously.
But we continue to see criticism from those that still sit in the opposition benches, that being the EFF, criticizing the president on the deployment of the SANDF, saying that this is a failure of police capacity.
I'll be forced to agree with Julius Malema on this one, or the EFF on this one. They are particularly correct. In principle, the president was right in deciding to deploy soldiers in the Western Cape and, of course, Gauteng. And now we hear the Eastern Cape as well. And indeed, the level of crime has reached the highest proportions and therefore needs to be contained. But let's ask ourselves basic questions. The first question is, what are soldiers trained for? Are they trained to do what they are now being deployed to do? The answer is an emphatic no. And then the second question will be, for how long are we going to deploy these soldiers? And then the answer you get from that will then lead to another question. Once these soldiers are pulled out, or once they pull out, what will then become of the problems they are hoping to address? In other words, we are not dealing with the problem here because the problem has been known for quite some time. The question is, what did we do to try and address those kinds of challenges? If we deploy soldiers, it's okay as a short-term solution, but what is our long-term solution? Those are the questions that we need to answer before we applaud the president.
But I mean, the same EFF also gave some praise to the president, particularly on his stance on foreign policy, including Israel's war on Gaza, and him just saying that foreign powers should not be allowed to bully South Africa. That was quite refreshing from the EFF, don't you think?
No, that is political maturity. You don't criticize for the sake of criticizing. You criticize when it is necessary, and then you give accolades where somebody deserves those accolades. In this case, South Africa's foreign policy has always been clear, especially as it pertains to Israel and Palestine, and as it pertains to Western Sahara, as it pertains to Cuba. We are clear as to what our policy stance is. And you don't have to be the governing party or the opposition party to basically subscribe to the foreign policy agenda of the country. Because we put the country first and then political parties come second. So on that one, I applaud the EFF. They're absolutely right, and I don't see anything sinister about that position.
And on governance as well as corruption, I mean, we saw there the vetting processes for law enforcement officers, given the implications that came out of the Madlanga Commission, particularly when it came to EMPD. Songezo Zibi emphasized tackling corruption and strengthening local government. How critical are these, especially when it comes to national stability and economic recovery?
Indeed, they are very critical. We are talking about local government, for example. We are going to have elections later this year if everything goes according to plan. And if local government is not working, no matter how good we can be at a provincial level and at a national level, it will amount to nothing. Because the local sphere of government is the one that is closest to the people. And therefore, you need to make sure that we have a functional local government so that people can see service delivery. Most of the service delivery protests happen as a result of failures of municipalities, be they district municipalities or local government or local municipalities. So then you have to strengthen those. And of course, you need a stable country for you to achieve all the goals that we are hoping to achieve. So I think that the concerns that are raised by political parties are not just derived from hatred of the president or hatred of the ANC or hatred of the multi-party coalition, which has been labeled the GNU. These are concerns that are coming from the ground. Those of us who frequent the rural areas where we come from, we understand exactly what people are going through. And then those who never visit those areas are likely then to daydream and then think about things that don't exist. We have to be there to understand the suffering of the people of this country. So yes, indeed, those concerns are genuine.
Prof, you speak about local government elections, and the DA leader, on reflecting on the president's speech, said that the speech reflected a country that has begun to turn the corner after years of stagnation. And he emphasized that what attributed to some of the successes of slight economic growth, lowered inflation, budget surpluses, improved credit ratings, and among other things, is because of the DA's decision to join the GNU. Do you think these would have a direct impact in terms of on the DA when it comes to the local government elections?
Let me answer this question in two ways. Firstly, STNSN statement is misplaced and misdirected. And in fact, it doesn't assist the coalition government. You don't sing your own praises when you are part of a collective, which is the same reason why President Ramaphosa cannot then claim that he has done well as an individual, nor that the ANC has done well as one political party. If you are part of a coalition government, whatever decisions that you make, those decisions are collective decisions. So in this case, I think it's so unfortunate that we'll have a leader of a party that was an opposition party, which is now part of government, suddenly saying that the reason why the government seems to be recovering is because of one political party. That in fact undermines all the other 9 political parties, including the ANC, which invited the DA, by the way. So basically, you don't need such statements. You need political maturity in times like this, not for the sake of your own political parties, but for the sake of the country. As it pertains to what is called economic recovery of the country, it's too early to celebrate, because you cannot celebrate an economy that is growing less than 2% and say we have done well. It's okay that we are not where we used to be, but we are not out of the woods yet. Compare South Africa with Ghana, for example, whose economy is growing by 5% and above, and we cannot make even 2%. So there is very little, I wouldn't say there is nothing to celebrate, but there is very little to celebrate if our economy is growing below 2%.
Right.
Then at the same time, you'll have people singing their own praises. That is unwarranted, it's uncalled for, and in fact it's mischievous.
Prof, thank you so much for your time and for your thoughts this evening. That's Prof. Bheki Mngomezulu, a political analyst, just talking to us about that SONA debate that took place in Parliament today.